Hello class, today I'm going to talk to you about the health hazards from eating or consuming raw shellfish. In the United States, there are as many as 33 million cases of foodborne illness which are responsible for an estimated 9,000 deaths annually. Pathogens can pose a serious hazard to individuals who consume shellfish. Health hazards from foodborne sources can be categorized into 5 different categories. You have infections, intoxications, metabolic food disorders, allergies, idiosyncratic illnesses. Infections and intoxications can affect everyone. The microorganisms involved in shellfish infections include bacteria, viruses, and parasites. Today, I will discuss 2 very common bacterial infections that you can get from raw shellfish, one particular virus, and one particular parasite. In the bacterial family, I'm going to discuss Vibrio and Shigellosis because these are the 2 most common bacterial infections that you get from raw shellfish. So, what is Vibrio? Well, it's the bacteria that comes from the same family as cholera. It normally lives in warm seawater and is called halophilic, meaning they require salt. So, what are the health hazards of ingesting this bacteria? Among healthy people, you can get vomiting, diarrhea, and abdominal pain. In immunocompromised people or people with chronic liver disease, you can have far more severe cases such as gastroenteritis and sepsis. There are 4 different Vibrio strains, as you can see there, and all you can acquire from raw shellfish. So now we're going to go on to Shigellosis. What is Shigellosis? Well, it comes from the germ Shigella, and it comes from a family of bacteria that basically causes diarrhea in humans. They are microscopic, living creatures, and they pass from person to person. What are the health hazards of Shigellosis? Well, most people who get infected with it develop diarrhea, fever, stomach cramps, and this usually starts a day or 2 after they're exposed to the bacteria. It's often very common that you'll have bloody diarrhea. But the good news is, in healthy individuals, this usually resolves itself in 5 to 7 days. The genus Shigella is divided into 4 serogroups, and in each serogroup you have 40 different serotypes. Now we're going to go on to the noroviruses. What are noroviruses? Well, they are groups that were previously known as the Norwalk-like viruses, and they affect your stomach and intestines. This is the virus that single-handedly causes the most infections on cruise ships. What are the health hazards? Well, it's usually mild. It's your basic food poisoning. You get it, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and abdominal pain. Sometimes you might get a headache or low-grade fever, and it usually resolves itself in about 5 to 6 days. Now we're going to go on to parasitic infections. The one parasite I'm going to talk to you about is called anisakiasis. Before I get into what anisakiasis is, I'm going to tell you a little bit about parasitic infections. Most of them do come from raw shellfish, and the ones that do come from raw shellfish include cestodes, which are commonly known as tapeworms. You have another form called trematode, which is your basic fluke, and then you have a nematode, which is a roundworm, and that is exactly what anisakiasis is. It's a roundworm. Typically, these parasites live in different hosts as they complete their life cycle. Where do these infections occur? Well, internationally. Because of the international fish and seafood trade, they kind of spread all over the world. So what is anisakiasis? Like I said before, it is a roundworm. And what happens is when you consume raw or undercooked shellfish or seafood, the parasite then enters into your gastrointestinal tract and into your stomach. In North America, anisakiasis is most frequently diagnosed when the infected individual starts feeling a tingling or a tickling sensation in their throat, and they can literally cough up and manually extract the nematode. What are some interesting facts about anisakiasis? Well, in very severe cases, there's acute abdominal pain, much like appendicitis, and it's accompanied by nauseous feeling. Symptoms occur from as little as 1 hour to about 2 weeks after consumption of raw shellfish. The interesting thing and unique thing about anisakiasis is that usually only one nematode is recovered from the patient, unlike other parasites that multiply and go all over your body. What basically happens when you get infected with anisakiasis is you consume the raw shellfish, it then goes into your gastrointestinal tract and go into your stomach. Well, because this parasite is not used to being in a human stomach, it decides to try to burrow itself out through your intestinal wall. Well, while it's trying to burrow its way out, it usually dies. So when it dies, your white blood cells, in particular your eosinophils, all go to the site of the infection where the worm is. They all clump around it and form what is called a granuloma. This granuloma then in turn turns into a tumor, and sometimes it can block you can block the pathway in your stomach. So then you get those very severe appendicitis-like pains. You go to your doctor, and your doctor then decides to give you an MRI. He sees the tumor, and they take it out. When they send it to pathology, that's usually when they realize that it was a parasite. The one good thing is usually because only one, it doesn't multiply, you only have one in there. So you're usually fine afterwards. They rarely reach full maturity in humans, and most of the times they're eliminated spontaneously from your digestive tract, which is a good thing. In the cases where patients vomit or coughs up the worm, it can sometimes leave its larva in your nasal and throat passages and then repeats the life and hatch and repeats the life cycle again. So I know you're asking yourself, what can I do to protect myself from these nasty little infections? Well, you gotta know your seafood. Here are some safety tips. Make sure you know who's selling you your seafood. When you do purchase seafood, make sure you look at your seafood. And a lot of these parasites and things you can actually see with the naked eye. When you do buy your seafood and decide to prepare your own sushi, make sure you freeze it first, because freezing it kills the parasite. When you are getting shellfish, if it's live shellfish, you need to keep it alive. And you need to learn how to refrigerate the live shellfish properly. Another important fact is do not cross-contaminate. Whatever cutting board or counter you're sitting and seasoning your fish on or shellfish, do not then in turn use that same cutting board to cut your raw vegetables on. Make sure when you're cooking your seafood, you cook it thoroughly, because that is what kills most of the infections. I hope that my presentation has been very informative and that you've learned a lot about bacterial, viral, and parasitic infections. Thank you so much, and have a great day.